So this is the basic NAN setup. If you click on overview, you'll see all your workflows listed down here. You can create a new workflow by hitting this button. You can add a credential by hitting this one, but you can also add the credential if you head over here and just create the credential inside of the node you want to create it at. For every workflow, you will have a trigger. It's what starts it. And you have triggers like clicking test workflow, which when I click this, it will trigger that. You also have a trigger for chat. So this is really useful for testing out AI agents. But for now, let's just stick with this one. Head over to the plus sign. In this plus sign, you will find all the available nodes. And in these available nodes, you can add another trigger. We actually have a lot of different triggers. You can trigger it on schedule. So this is in the case where you want to execute the same workflow in a given period of time. When you receive a webhook call, you will see this in our integration with Evolution on form submission. So that's when you have a form, something for marketing wise, and you want to trigger a email automation system. This will do the trick when executed by another workflow. This is really awesome to make our workflows always single responsibility. And that is something really important that we might just see in the final video. Finally, on chat message, and there are other ways. So these other ways are either email trigger, error trigger, local file. We also have some integrations. So if I move over to Google Drive, we have some triggers of its own. So on change to a specific file, on changes involving a specific folder. And this, as it says, if you have a specific folder inside your drive that you want it to, every time someone inserts a file in there, you want it to update and maybe send those files over to your vector store database. This is what you would be using. Okay, so now enough of these triggers. Let's go on to the data transformation. And these are the nodes that you'll spend the majority of your time in. Let's execute that to see what happens in between each one of them. Also, I didn't explain, but you can pin data from one node to another. So I've just removed my image so you guys can see this edit button. Editing here, you can change whatever is inside of these fields. Let me save this and cancel it, then unpin this for you guys to understand how to actually pin it. So select the edit button, place that in, hit save, and that will be pinned automatically. With that information pinned up there, you can execute the workflow and it will use that information to send over to the next nodes, whatever is inside of there. So this node over here, the edit fields, what it received was this array of objects. Inside the fields, we have a JSON.name. How did it understand what to fetch over here? Since we have two datas, first item and second item. Why does it just show first item here? It's because it's showing the first actual item, but every node from NAN grabs item by item. So if we have two items up here, it will loop through each one of these items and then output the final result. What it did here is grab everything one by one. I told it to grab the name as the key and then the code as the value for this object. This is how you fetch for the previous node. If I didn't have this as the previous node and I still wanted to grab that data, so let's place a set field up here. Let's drag this over here, delete this, and now it's not the last data. If I use JSON name, there is no JSON name. How could I access that? In this dropdown, I can find the when clicking test workflow. Then if I delete that and drag that over here, I can successfully get the expression that refers to that position. And in some cases, you won't see that dropdown. So what you would want to do is just type in that, select it, place a dot. You'll see the suggestions. In the suggestions, you select the item. And as you do select these things, you will see a log of what you're accessing right over there. And make sure to avoid placing a position. In this case, it's an object, so you won't find a position for it. But if it's an array, you will only get the first position or the position that you select, and it won't dynamically get each item as it loops. So after I place that in, I can copy that, go over to this expression down here, and place in the code. Now running it, I successfully get the same output as before. So let's remove this connection, connect that back to this node, and let's see further ways of retrieving the previous node's data. For the code node, you'll want to place in input.all. And to access this first item, you would just place in this, but that's not the case for NAN. And if you inspect, go over to the console and run the test setup, you won't see anything simply because this is not true. This is not something that you can access. So going back here and just deleting all this, then running the test setup, you'll see what we actually receive. we receive a array of objects in which the first object has a JSON. And so if I wanted to search for this first item, the value of it, I would have to place in the 0 position and then place in JSON and finally place in first item. If I test this now, I successfully get its value. Moving on, we have the aggregate node. In some cases, you won't want to have multiple items. And there is a lot of use cases for this. Some people do that inside of the code node, but you really don't need that. You can just place in an aggregate node, select all item data, place the field you want it to be inserted in, and that way you can generate a single item instead of multiple ones. But if you ever have one item that has an array of objects, you can split it out by using this node. All you have to do is place the key of that array, and it will split out all the objects of that array into 2 items. Now, I know we still have the AI nodes and a lot of integration nodes like the ones from Google, such as Google Drive or Google Docs, or even Supabase, but we will get to that in a previous video. For now, let's look up how you can save this workflow or just share it. If you copy your entire node and just paste it to your notepad, you'll see an entire JSON. And this will work if you go over to a new workflow. So hit create workflow and paste it in here. You'll get the same workflow. An even better way of doing it is hitting these 3 dots and downloading your workflow. So if you drag this over to Google Chrome, you'll see the same JSON. Actually, it's not exactly the same JSON because you get some properties like name of the workflow, which you wouldn't get if you just copied it like this. Now up here in the executions tab, it's probably the tab that you'll most be using. It helps you debug your application. When you click that, you'll see every time you executed either in test mode or in production. And this is what allows you to get whatever was executed inside of this first trigger node. So in many cases, you get a structured JSON from whatever webhook that you set up, but you don't know what structure that is. And here is exactly where you will get that structure. I believe I will show that inside of the evolution setup video. Up here, you get a history view of all the changes you've made, and you can roll back to a previous version. So if I click on this one, you'll see that all I had was this. You can copy that and then just close this, paste it in there, and use what you had configured previously. I could name a bunch of init and variables, but for now, and no pun intended, I will just show this now variable, which is showing up the date. As you can see, it shows up 1734, but for me, it's actually 1934. So how can I change the time of init and service? Just head over here to these 3 dots, hit settings, and in here, you'll place your current time zone. For me, it's America Sao Paulo, save. Going back to this node and selecting it, you'll see it's still wrong. So let's save the node, F5, certify that it configured it correctly. Yes, it did. Go back to this node, and now it's successfully set up in 1935. Finally, something very important that I was forgetting that really helps organizing your workflows is adding a tag. So you can add a tag for AI agent when it's the case, hit that, and that will be the tag for this workflow. Eventually, and ideally, you will have a lot of workflows. That's because each workflow has a single responsibility. You probably have seen in YouTube thumbnails or a LinkedIn post, a workflow with a lot of ramifications from a single node, or maybe like hundreds of nodes. And that is probably a very bad workflow. And since you're going to do it right and have each workflow being a single responsibility, you will want to use these tags up here.